What if your thoughts about that one person aren't just random? What if they're a message from your soul, from the universe, or even from the depths of your own unconscious mind? Carl Jung, the legendary psychologist, believed that when someone lingers in your thoughts, it's rarely an accident. It could be a mirror, a lesson, or even a sign of something far deeper than you realize. We've all been there. Someone keeps popping into your mind, and no matter how much you try to distract yourself, they stay there, almost like an echo. Most people dismiss it as mere coincidence or simple infatuation. But what if there's more to it? Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, taught us that the unconscious mind speaks in symbols, patterns, and synchronicities. When you can't stop thinking about someone, it might not just be about them, it could be about you. Your psyche might be trying to show you something, an unresolved emotion, a hidden desire, or even a spiritual connection that transcends time. In this video, we'll explore Jung's wisdom on why certain people occupy our minds and what it truly means, psychologically and spiritually. By the end, you might never look at your thoughts the same way again. The idea that we can't stop thinking about someone often feels like a mystery, one that dances between the realms of psychology and spirituality. Carl Jung, one of the most profound thinkers on the human psyche, would argue that these persistent thoughts are rarely just about the other person. Instead, they might be reflections of our own unconscious, projections of the parts of ourselves we haven't yet acknowledged or integrated. Jung introduced concepts like the anima and animus, the unconscious feminine and masculine aspects within us, as well as the shadow self, the hidden, often repressed parts of our personality. When we fixate on someone, it could be because they embody qualities we've disowned in ourselves, whether those are strengths we admire or flaws we refuse to see. In this sense, the mind isn't just randomly latching onto a person, it's using them as a mirror, showing us something we need to recognize within. But what if there's more to it than psychology? What if the universe, or something beyond our immediate understanding, is also at play? Many spiritual traditions suggest that recurring thoughts about a person might signal a deeper, even metaphysical connection. Some believe it could be the echo of a past life relationship, a bond that wasn't fully resolved and is now resurfacing for closure or continued growth. Others speak of soul contracts, unspoken agreements made before this lifetime to meet, learn from, or teach one another. There's also the idea of energetic ties, where two people remain linked through an invisible thread of shared emotion or experience, pulling each other back into awareness even across time and distance. So how do we know whether these thoughts are purely psychological or something more? Jung himself bridged these worlds, acknowledging that the unconscious often speaks in a language that feels mystical, synchronicities, dreams, and inexplicable fascinations. The line between mind and spirit blurs when we consider that the psyche might be tapping into something beyond the personal, something archetypal or even collective. The question then becomes, is this just my mind working through its own material, or is there a larger force at play? The answer might not be either slash or but both, a dance between inner and outer, self and universe, memory and destiny. The key is to pay attention, to explore without rushing to conclusions, and to ask not just why this person is on your mind, but what they might be inviting you to discover. The phenomenon of synchronicity, as introduced by Carl Jung, shatters the conventional belief that coincidences are merely random accidents of timing. Jung proposed that certain events are connected not by cause and effect, but by meaning, a hidden thread woven through the fabric of reality that ties our inner world to the outer one in inexplicable yet profoundly significant ways. When we experience a synchronicity, it carries a peculiar weight, a resonance that ordinary coincidences lack. It's as if the universe is whispering, or sometimes even shouting, to get our attention. These moments often arrive with an uncanny sense of timing, like thinking intensely about someone you haven't spoken to in years, only to receive a message from them moments later, or dreaming of an old friend before unexpectedly running into them the next day. Jung would argue these aren't flukes. They're meaningful intersections where the psychological and the spiritual momentarily align. What makes synchronicities so compelling is their emotional charge. They don't just surprise us, they stir something deeper. A true synchronicity often leaves us with a sense of awe, as if we've brushed against something larger than ourselves. Jung collaborated with physicist Wolfgang Pauli to explore the idea that there might be an underlying order to reality that transcends linear logic, one where mind and matter aren't entirely separate. In this view, when a person repeatedly appears in your thoughts and then suddenly re-enters your life, it could be more than just memory or wishful thinking at work. It might reflect an unseen pattern, a kind of acausal connecting principle that binds inner and outer experiences in ways science hasn't yet fully explained. This raises a tantalizing possibility that the people who occupy our minds persistently might be connected to us through something beyond the visible world. Synchronicities involving a specific individual could hint at a shared journey, an unresolved dynamic, or even a destiny that hasn't yet fully unfolded. Some spiritual traditions take this further, suggesting that such moments are guideposts, subtle nudges from the universe meant to steer us toward a certain path or realization. Whether interpreted psychologically or metaphysically, synchronicities invite us to pause and ask, "What is this trying to show me?" They challenge us to look beyond surface-level explanations and consider that the boundaries between thought and reality, between self and other, might be far more permeable than we've been taught to believe. The deeper we delve into these experiences, the more we realize that synchronicities aren't just curiosities, they're potential doorways. When a person keeps appearing in your life through coincidence, it might be worth exploring what they symbolize for you. Are they reflecting an unacknowledged part of yourself? Are they calling you toward a new phase of growth? Or is there an invisible thread of connection that defies ordinary explanation? Jung didn't dismiss these questions as fantasy. He saw them as vital to understanding the full scope of human experience. In the end, synchronicities remind us that reality is far stranger and more interconnected than it seems, and that the mind's preoccupation with certain people might be one of its most mysterious and meaningful languages. The human mind has a remarkable way of revealing itself through others, especially those we can't stop thinking about. Carl Jung's concept of projection helps explain why certain individuals linger in our thoughts with such persistence. According to Jung, we often unconsciously cast aspects of ourselves, particularly those we haven't fully acknowledged or accepted, onto other people. This psychological mechanism serves as both a defense and a revelation. It protects us from facing uncomfortable truths about ourselves while simultaneously offering clues about our hidden depths. When you find yourself intensely focused on someone, whether with admiration, longing, or even irritation, it's worth asking, what part of myself might I be seeing in them? The qualities that captivate us in others, their confidence, creativity, or even their flaws, often reflect latent potentials or denied aspects within our own psyche waiting to be recognized and integrated. This process of projection becomes particularly fascinating when we examine it through Jung's framework of the shadow, the repository of all the traits, desires, and impulses we've disowned or suppressed. The shadow forms as we grow, shaped by societal expectations, familial conditioning, and personal experiences that teach us which parts of ourselves are acceptable and which must be hidden away. Yet these exiled fragments don't disappear. They find expression through our intense reactions to others. The person who irritates you beyond reason might be carrying your own unacknowledged shortcomings. The one you idolize could represent your dormant talents or unlived potential. Even romantic obsessions often say more about our inner landscape than the actual person we're fixating on. They become screens onto which we project our deepest yearnings for completion, our anima or animus ideals. Shadow work, the process of reclaiming these projected parts, begins with simple but profound self-inquiry. When someone occupies your thoughts persistently, try turning the focus inward. What emotion does this person stir in me? What story am I telling myself about them? The intensity of your reaction often indicates the importance of what's being mirrored. A person who triggers jealousy might be showing you where you feel inadequate. Someone you admire excessively could point to gifts you've been afraid to claim. This isn't to say the other person has no real qualities. Rather, the power they hold over your psyche likely stems from this interplay between their actual traits and what you've unconsciously assigned to them. The spiritual dimension of projection adds another layer to this dynamic. In many wisdom traditions, the people who trouble or fascinate us are considered our greatest teachers. They arrive in our mental space precisely because they have something to show us about ourselves, if we're willing to look. This perspective transforms obsessive thoughts from psychological disturbances into potential awakenings. Instead of asking, "Why can't I stop thinking about them?" we might ask, "What is this obsession trying to teach me about my own wholeness?" The answer often lies in those very qualities we've projected outward, the very aspects we must learn to embrace within ourselves to achieve greater psychological and spiritual integration. Ultimately, Jung's insights remind us that our minds are constantly in dialogue with the unseen parts of ourselves. The people who haunt our thoughts serve as living mirrors, showing us what we've yet to acknowledge or develop within. By learning to withdraw our projections, to take back what belongs to us psychologically, we don't just free ourselves from unhealthy fixations. We reclaim lost fragments of our identity. This is the alchemy of shadow work, transforming obsessive thoughts into self-knowledge and psychological attachments into stepping stones toward wholeness. The next time someone lingers in your mind beyond reason, consider that they might be an unwitting guide, pointing you toward territories of yourself waiting to be explored and embraced. The persistent presence of someone in your thoughts may transcend psychological explanations and tap into something far more ancient, the possibility of soul connections that span across lifetimes. Many spiritual traditions suggest that certain relationships carry karmic weight, representing unfinished lessons or unresolved energies from past incarnations. These karmic ties often manifest with an undeniable intensity, as if the universe itself is compelling you to pay attention. The person you can't stop thinking about might have played a significant role in your soul's journey long before this current lifetime, as a lover, a nemesis, or a profound teacher. The magnetic pull you feel could be your higher self reminding you of work left incomplete, patterns still needing resolution, or debts of energy that must be balanced. These connections frequently arrive with a sense of déjà vu, an inexplicable familiarity that defies logic, as if your souls recognize each other on some primordial level beyond time and space. Within this framework of eternal connections, the concepts of twin flames and soulmates offer particularly compelling explanations for why certain individuals dominate our mental and emotional landscape. Soulmates are often described as kindred spirits, souls with whom we share deep harmony and natural affinity. These relationships tend to feel effortless and nurturing, as if reuniting with a long-lost part of yourself. Twin flame connections, however, operate differently. They're frequently more intense and tumultuous, designed to catalyze radical transformation. The twin flame dynamic serves as a spiritual crucible, bringing our deepest wounds and insecurities to the surface for healing. When you can't stop thinking about someone who simultaneously triggers and fascinates you, it may indicate this kind of mirror soul connection, one meant to shatter your illusions, break down your ego defenses, and push you toward your highest potential. The very difficulty of such relationships often proves their purpose. They aren't meant for comfort, but for evolution. This perspective transforms persistent thoughts from mental distractions into spiritual assignments. The person who lives rent-free in your mind might represent a doorway to your next level of growth, an invitation to heal ancestral patterns, release old vows or contracts made in other lifetimes, or awaken aspects of your divine nature. Many report experiencing vivid dreams, synchronicities, or even physical sensations when in the throes of such connections, as if the veil between worlds grows thin. These phenomena suggest the interaction isn't limited to the physical plane. Your souls may be communicating on other dimensions, working through energies that your conscious mind struggles to comprehend. The discomfort or longing you feel could actually be your spirit's way of drawing attention to what needs resolution, not just in this lifetime but across the tapestry of your soul's entire journey. Yet these profound connections don't always manifest as permanent relationships in our earthly lives. Sometimes their purpose is served simply through the energetic exchange, the lessons learned, or the healing activated, even if the person remains physically distant or the relationship proves fleeting. This explains why you might think constantly about someone you barely know or someone from your distant past. The intensity of your fixation often corresponds to the depth of work being done at the soul level, not necessarily the outer circumstances of your connection. Your higher self knows what your conscious mind does not. That this person, however briefly they appear in your life, carries significance for your soul's evolution. Ultimately, viewing persistent thoughts about someone through the lens of soul connections invites us to expand our understanding of relationships beyond the conventional. These bonds remind us that we're spiritual beings having human experiences, and that our most challenging or captivating relationships may be part of a grand curriculum designed for our awakening. When someone occupies your mind beyond reason, instead of resisting or obsessing, you might ask, what is my soul trying to remember or resolve through this connection? The answer could reveal not just the mystery of your fixation, but the next step in your soul's eternal journey toward wholeness. When someone occupies your thoughts with such persistence, it creates an important crossroads in your inner journey. The first and perhaps most powerful step is turning inward through self-reflection. Keeping a journal dedicated to exploring these thoughts can reveal surprising patterns. When do they appear most strongly? What emotions surface when you think of this person? What specific qualities do they represent to you? This isn't about analyzing the other person, but rather uncovering what their presence in your psyche reflects about your own unmet needs, unexpressed potentials, or unresolved wounds. As you write, you may discover that this person symbolizes something far greater than themselves, perhaps an aspect of your own identity-seeking expression, or an emotional charge from your past that hasn't found resolution. The act of journaling creates a sacred container where your unconscious can begin to speak its truth, often revealing answers that your rational mind would overlook. Beyond conscious reflection, entering into dialogue with your deeper self through meditation and attention to dreams can provide profound insights. Jung saw dreams as the royal road to understanding the unconscious, where symbols and archetypes communicate in their own mysterious language. Before sleep, you might set an intention to receive clarity about this persistent connection. Pay special attention to any dreams featuring this person, but also notice other symbolic elements. Water often represents emotion, houses can symbolize the self, and journeys may reflect your life path. Even if the person doesn't appear directly, the dream landscape may hold metaphors for what this fixation represents in your inner world. In meditation, rather than trying to banish thoughts of this person, try sitting with the energy they evoke. Where do you feel it in your body? What memories or associations arise? This contemplative approach transforms obsessive thinking into conscious exploration, allowing what was unconscious to surface with new understanding. A crucial discernment emerges when considering whether to act on these persistent thoughts or practice letting go. Not all soul connections are meant to manifest as physical relationships. Some exist primarily in the psychic realm as catalysts for inner transformation. If this person is unavailable, unhealthy for you, or simply not reciprocating your energy, their spiritual purpose may be served through the internal shifts they've inspired rather than an outer connection. The art lies in distinguishing between intuition telling you to reach out and attachment masquerading as divine guidance. One helpful question is, does thinking about this person expand or contract your energy? Do you feel more whole and inspired, or anxious and depleted? Sometimes the most powerful spiritual work happens when we release our need for particular outcomes and allow connections to take their natural form, whether that's a physical relationship, a healed understanding, or simply gratitude for the growth they've sparked. This journey of understanding why someone occupies your mind ultimately leads back to yourself, your healing, your wholeness, your unfolding path. Whether through journaling, dream work, meditation, or conscious release, you're not just solving the mystery of a persistent thought, you're engaging in the sacred practice of self-revelation. The person who lingers in your awareness may simply be the doorway to a deeper conversation with your own soul. When we stop asking, why can't I stop thinking about them? And start asking, what does this reveal about what I need to acknowledge or heal within myself? We transform psychological fixation into spiritual awakening. The answer may not change the outer circumstances of your connection, but it will forever change your relationship with yourself. And that is where the true magic happens. As we've explored throughout this journey, constantly thinking about someone is never just a random occurrence. It's a meaningful phenomenon that bridges psychology and spirituality. Carl Jung's wisdom reveals how these persistent thoughts often reflect projections of our unconscious, unclaimed aspects of ourselves mirrored through others, whether through our anima/animus, shadow material, or unrealized potential. We've seen how synchronicities transform ordinary coincidences into spiritual signposts, and how soul connections, whether karmic ties, twin flame bonds, or soulmate recognition, suggest these relationships may span beyond a single lifetime. Most importantly, we've discovered that these preoccupations aren't problems to solve, but invitations to grow, opportunities to heal, integrate, and evolve into more complete versions of ourselves. Rather than resisting these persistent thoughts or dismissing them as mere obsession, what if we began to see them as sacred messengers? Each time someone occupies your mind beyond reason, it's an opportunity to pause and ask the deeper questions. What part of myself is being called to attention? What lesson is my soul attempting to remember? This shift in perspective transforms mental fixation from a source of frustration into a powerful tool for self-discovery. Whether through journaling, dream work, meditation, or shadow integration, you now have practical ways to explore these connections consciously. Remember, some of the most profound spiritual assignments come disguised as everyday thoughts about ordinary people. The magic happens when we're willing to look beyond the surface. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you experienced this unexplainable preoccupation with someone? What synchronicities or realizations have emerged for you? Share your stories in the comments below. Your experience might help others navigating similar journeys. If this exploration of Jungian psychology and spiritual connections resonated with you, consider liking this video and subscribing for more content on depth psychology, symbolism, and conscious living. For those wanting to continue this inner work, I recommend checking out my video on Jungian Shadow Work Explained. It dives deeper into how to integrate those projected aspects we've discussed today. Thank you for joining me in this exploration of life's most fascinating mysteries, the ones that unfold not in distant lands, but in the intimate landscape of our own minds and hearts. Until next time, keep listening to what your persistent thoughts are trying to tell you.